Before starting the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you are new to my channel. It really motivates me to keep on creating anime recaps for you guys. The story starts and our protagonist is passing by the convenience store. Some people are running away from the store, and a man comes out of it with a knife. The armed man targets two little girls, and our protagonist tackles the armed man and he saves the girls. Our protagonist then notices that he has been stabbed, and he starts losing consciousness. The girls he saved cry for him, and he is glad that they are okay. He thinks that he shouldn't have made them cry, and he dies. Our protagonist then wakes up in an unfamiliar room, and he wonders if he is in a hospital. The maid in the room then notices that he is awake, and she calls him Kane. She is glad that he is alright, and so is his mother. Kane then sees his reflection in the mirror, and he wonders who that is. His mother then asks Kane if he is alright, and the maid Sylvie thinks that Kane must be confused, because he was asleep for over a week. Kane's mother then thinks that Kane must be hungry, and she leaves with the maid to get some soup for him. While alone, Kane takes a moment to assess his situation, and he wonders if he was reincarnated into another world. Kane makes his peace with dying, and he thinks that the first thing he needs to do is check his surroundings. Sylvie then comes into the room while Kane is checking out his body, and she wonders if Kane wet the bed. She tries to change his pants, and after changing them she feeds Kane some soup. After feeding Kane, Sylvie tries to make him burp and put him to sleep. Kane is embarrassed at being treated as a child, and Sylvie leaves his room after a while. Kane then mentions that he managed to get a lot of answers out of her, and Kane states that his name is Kane Von Silford, and he is 3 years old. His father's name is Garm, and his mother's name is Sarah, and he has a big sister named Rain who is 2 years older than him. He explains that Sarah is the second wife, and the first wife's name is Maria, and she has 2 sons, Jin and Alec. Kane states that Garm is a Margrave, and he has his own army that protects the border against foreign invaders. Later, Sylvie teaches Kane about the world, and she mentions that monsters, magic, and adventurers all exist in this world, and Kane is excited to hear that the things that he used to dream about are real. Kane thinks that he wants to use magic, and Sylvie mentions that it might take some time, and he needs to learn how to read and write first. Kane mentions that when he heard that this world has magic, he decided to live his life in it, and he had no qualms about leaving his old world because he didn't have any family there. A while later, Rain tells his father that Kane can now write, and he can do math as well. Garm thinks that it's amazing, and his mother mentions that Kane must be a genius. Kane can't tell them that he has the mind of a high schooler, and he mentions that Sylvie is just good at teaching. Garm then asks Kane why he suddenly decided to study, and Sarah mentions that Kane seems different ever since he came down with that fever. Kane then mentions that he is just trying to learn all he can about this world, and Garm mentions that he can't leave the estate to him, so it's a good way for him to find his success. Kane then asks permission from his father to read books on magic and the kingdom's history. His father allows it, but his sister mentions that he won't be able to use magic until he gets baptized. Garm mentions that he will need to wait until he is 5 years old to get baptized, and right now he can start by studying the books. Later we see that Kane can already use magic even though he hasn't been baptized. He tries to use it again, and the magic gets a little out of control. Sylvie and Rain then comes to his room, but thankfully he puts out the fire magic before they can see it. Rain then tells him that she knows that he has been reading about the outside world in secret, and she wonders if he wants her to teach him about it. From then on, Rain started teaching Kane about the outside world, and Kane learned about the 300-year history of the kingdom of Esfort. He found out how the first king of this kingdom started out as an adventurer, and his name was Yuya. He thinks that Yuya sounds like a Japanese name, and he wonders if this guy was also reincarnated like him. He also found out that there are elves, dwarves, and beast folk in this world. Kane thinks that he wants to go to the outside world, and he thinks that he can't wait for his baptism. 2 years then pass by, and it's finally time for Kane to be baptized. Kane gets dressed for his baptism, and they leave for the church. Kane can finally see the outside world, and he asks Rain what it's like to be bestowed with status magic. Rain shows him her status, and he notices that her sister has the title called Adorer of Kane, and he wonders what it means. She quickly hides it, and Kane pretends like he didn't see it. Sarah then mentions that Rain was granted a level 2 protection from the god of magic, and Kane wonders what that means. Garm explains that magic protections are attainable in level 1 to 5, and the higher the level the higher will be the user's natural talent. Sarah mentions that protections are given by God, and they then arrive at the church. Garm explains that the church worships the 7 pillar gods, and today they will be informing the gods that Cain has reached 5 years of age. Cain then prays to the gods, and the priest asks the gods to bestow Cain with their blessing. A light then shines from behind the statues of the gods, and Cain meets the gods in his mental plane. Cain then wonders where he is, and the gods tell him that he is in the world of the 7 gods. The god of creation then introduces himself as Xenum, and he tells Rime, the god of death and rebirth, to explain the situation to Cain. Rime mentions that Cain's death was unexpected, and she mentions that the criminal would have tripped and fell even if Cain didn't tackle him. She mentions that he died for nothing, and because of this the criminal was charged with murder. But since he died doing a good deed, the god of earth requested her to reincarnate him into this world. They meant to block his memories until he was 5 years old, but due to some reason he recalled them at the age of 3. Cain understands the situation, and he thanks the gods for letting him keep his memories. The goddess of magic then bestows Cain with her blessing, and the god of creation, war, technology, and the rest of the gods also bestow Cain with their blessings as well. They then send Cain back, and the priest mentions that he has never seen a light like that coming out of the statues. Garm wonders if this means that his son received more blessings, and he tells Cain to show him his status. Cain has a bad feeling about this, and he goes to a corner faking being sick, and he checks his stats. Cain notices that his stats are off the charts, and he notices that he has level 10 blessing of all the gods. He wonders how it's possible as the highest level should be 5, and he then notices that he has the ability to create magic. He creates a magic called Status Conceal to hide his status. The scene cuts to Cain and his family at the dinner table, and they celebrate Cain's 5th birthday. Garm then wonders if Cain checked his status, and Cain mentions that he did, and he received lots of protections from the gods. Cain then shows them his stats, and they are all surprised to see it. They notice that Cain has the protection of all 7 of the gods, and he has a number of skills. Garm thinks that with this many skills he will be guaranteed success in whatever career he chooses, and he tells Cain to never show his status to anyone. He states that he could be considered a threat to the kingdom, and he could be put under state supervision. He asks the servants to keep this a secret as well, and Cain then goes to his room. Cain then notices a book on summoning magic, and he goes outside, and he tries to summon something fluffy and cute. But he ends up summoning a monster instead, and his sister and her friend then comes there. The monster tries to hurt them, and Cain tries to protect them with his magic. But it doesn't work, and the monster punches Cain. Cain then uses summoning magic to send the monster back, and he falls to the ground. The girls are worried about him, and they ask him if he is alright. Cain then thinks that he made people cry again, and he wonders if he is going to die once more. Cain then notices that he is alright, and the girls are glad. Cain then thinks that this time he was able to make people smile, and he thinks that in this life he can use his powers to make people smile. The scene changes to Cain's debut ceremony, and he thanks everyone for attending it. Garm then asks Cain what he would like to be in the future, and Cain mentions that he wants to be an adventurer who can protect people's smiles. The story continues, and Garm mentions that Cain would need to study a lot more to become an adventurer, and he states that he will arrange a tutor for him. Cain is excited to hear this, and later he thinks what his tutor is going to be like. He wonders if he will be ripped or be more like a witch. Sylvie then tells Cain that his tutor is here. Cain uses his move spell to teleport, and he ends up falling on a girl's boobs. The girl wonders if Cain needs a nurse, and she states that she can't produce milk yet. Cain then apologizes, and the butler introduces Cain to his new tutors named Millie and Nina. The scene cuts to the tutors introducing themselves to Cain's parents, and the green-haired one introduces herself as Nina, and the red-haired one introduces herself as Millie. They are both D-rank adventurers, and Cain notices that Nina is an elf. Cain then tells them they don't need to speak so politely to him as they are his tutors, and Garm mentions that they will be teaching Cain for 3 years. Millie mentions that they should get started right away, and they go to the training grounds. Millie mentions that they will be starting with swordsmanship, and she tells Cain to start with some swings. Cain swings his sword, and Millie wonders how Cain is so good. Nina thinks that he might be better than Millie, and Millie mentions that she won't lose to a 5-year-old. Millie then tells Cain that they should have a mock battle since Cain can already swing the sword like that, and Cain attacks Millie. Cain then attacks Millie rapidly, and Nina wonders if Cain has the protection of the god of war. Cain mentions that he does, and his father told him to not talk about this with anybody outside his family. Millie then tells Cain to stop, and she mentions that she won't be able to keep up with him at this pace. She tells Nina to start teaching him magic, and Nina mentions that she has level 3 protection from the goddess of magic. Nina mentions that they will start with the basics, and Cain states that he already learned that. Cain then shows Nina some of the spells he can use, and Nina notices that Cain can use enchanted magic. She thinks that it takes intense training to learn enchanted magic, and Cain is a genius to achieve that at the age of 5. Millie then points out that Cain can use all elements, and Nina thinks that it's impossible, as even Sage class mages can't use all the elements. Nina then asks Cain if he also has the protection of the god of magic, and Cain mentions that he does. Millie then whispers to Nina that they might not be able to teach him anything, and Cain then pulls out a towel from his item box. They are surprised to see that he also has the item box skill, and they think that nothing can surprise them anymore. Nina then mentions that they can't teach him here, as this place won't last long against his power. Cain then wonders if they can conduct his lessons outside, and he mentions that he has never left the mansion except for his baptism. Millie thinks that it might be better if they practice outside, and she mentions that they will need to convince his father first. The scene then cuts to them asking permission from his father, and they mention that Cain has surpassed the beginner level in both magic and swordsmanship. They state that teaching him intermediate level here will destroy the mansion, and Gar mentions that he knew that this day would come, but he never expected it on Cain's first day of training. They then ask for permission to teach him outside the mansion, and Garm agrees, but he mentions that they have to return by sundown. They then venture out of the mansion, and they arrive at the plains. Nina now tells Cain to try intermediate magic on a rock lying around, and Cain mentions that he will start with Firewall. He then uses Firewall, and he decimates the rock. Millie then thinks that the spell must have drained a lot of Cain's magic power, and she wonders if Cain feels tired. Cain mentions that he doesn't, and they are surprised that Cain also has an insane amount of magic. A killer rabbit then attacks them, and Cain slays it with his air bullet. The tutors congratulate him on his first kill, and Cain stores the rabbit in his item box, and he mentions that he will show it to his mother and sister. They think that the item box is cool, and Millie mentions that she is planning to buy a magic bag when she saves up enough money. Nina explains that a magic bag is just like an item box, but they are pricey. Millie then mentions that they should hunt some more monsters, and she asks Nina to use her search magic to find the monsters. Nina uses her search magic to find a few killer rabbits ahead of them, and Cain then asks her how she used that magic. Nina mentions that she spread around her own magic in a thin layer, and Cain then tries using it. Cain manages to use the magic, and he locates 4 killer rabbits ahead of them. Nina is surprised that Cain also managed to find their specific number, and they then slay the killer rabbits. One of them goes into the forest, and Nina tells Cain to not venture there as that forest is inhabited by dangerous monsters. She mentions that the monsters in that forest stage an outbreak on the city every decade, and they tell Cain to become a strong adventurer so he can protect the city when the time comes. Cain agrees, and the scene cuts to Cain at his house, and he notices that he has leveled up to level 8. He thinks that this is abnormal, and he notices that he has an ability which allows him to gain experience points 100 times faster, and he thinks that if people find out about this then he will be executed. The next day they go to the guild, and Millie mentions that since Cain is stronger now he can fight stronger monsters, and they can get some info on the monsters from the guild. Millie then talks to the receptionist Rudy, and she asks her if there is anything stronger than killer rabbits in the area. Rudy mentions that she has gotten some reports about wolves, and Millie thinks that they will be perfect for Cain. Rudy then asks Cain how old he is, and Nina tells her that he is the son of the domain lord. Rudy then apologizes for her rude behavior, and they both introduce themselves, and Cain tells her that he is 5 years old. A C-rank adventurer Cross then bullies Nina and Millie, and he asks them to pour him some drinks. They refuse to do so, and he mentions that they are D-rank adventurers, and they should listen to a C-ranker. Cross then tries to be forceful, and a few of his men also joins him. Cain then tells Cross that he needs to train, and he asks Cross to not interfere with them. Cross doesn't listen, and Cain attacks him with a chop, and he knocks him down. Cross then draws a blade, and Cain dodges all of his attacks. Cain then kicks him out of the guild, and he also takes out his lackeys. Nina then thanks Cain for protecting them, and Millie can't believe that Cain can also use martial arts. They then head to the forest and Cain practices magic. 3 years then pass by, and Sylvie mentions that both of his tutors have declined to extend the duration of their contract. Cain then wonders if he can do something to thank them, and he remembers that they wanted some magic bags. At night Cain goes to the forest and he hunts a bloody ogre, and an earth dragon with fire magic to get the materials he needs for the magic bags. A soldier notices the fire magic from the city walls, and he sounds the alarm, and the army marches out to the forest. Cain then uses move to return to the mansion, and he accidentally leaves his towel behind. Garm and the soldiers then arrive at the scene, and they notice a crater there, but there isn't a single monster. Garm then notices Cain's towel in the crater, and the scene cuts to Cain fighting a pack of wolves. Millie thinks that Cain has gotten stronger, and Nina mentions that it's a little sad that they have to say goodbye today. Cain then states that he is done, and Millie tells him that he has done great for the past 3 years. Cain thanks them for their guidance, and he gives them the magical bags as a thank you gift. He mentions that he made them himself, and he states that the red one is made out of bloody ogre skin, and the green one is made out of the earth dragon skin. They ask where he got the materials from, and he mentions that he hunted the monsters himself. Millie then mentions that it normally takes an entire party of Arank adventurers to take down those monsters, and she can't believe that an 8-year-old did it alone. Cain then mentions that the bags can only hold things as big as his mansion, and Millie mentions that the bag she was going to buy would only hold about 2 carriages, and even that would have cost her a lot of money. They think that a bag like this is a national treasure class, and they mention that carrying it around will make them a target for thieves. Cain then mentions that they don't need to worry about that as the bags would get as heavy as the items inside them if someone other than the 3 of them holds them. They then mention that this would make the bags even beyond national treasure class, and they ask Cain if he is sure that they can have them. Cain mentions that he is, and they then kiss him on the cheek to thank him. They then mention that Cain can look for them if he ever needs their help, and they say their goodbyes. Later Cain's father comes to his room, and he mentions that he found his towel in the forest. He asks him to explain himself, and Cain mentions that he used intermediate magic to fight a earth dragon and a bloody ogre. Garm then tells Cain that he needs to know his limits, as he is just an 8-year-old, and the scolding continues for a while. The story continues with Cain fighting a dragon, and he defeats it with a single strike. Cain can't believe that it's really dead, and he then checks his stats. He notices that he has over 80 million magic points, and he has received the titles Enemy of All Monsters and Dragon Killer. The scene then changes, and 2 years after his training with his tutors Cain is heading to the royal capital to make his debut. Cain is now 10 years old, and Rain mentions that she can't wait to live with Cain in the capital. She tells him to start attending the school right now, and her father then mentions that Cain can't attend the academy until he is 12. Cain then asks Rain if she is excited about attending the academy, and she mentions that she will take the top position in the exams. Cain then asks how long it will take for them to reach the capital, and Gar mentions that it will take them 1 week if they don't encounter any monsters on the way. Cain then searches for monsters using his search skill, and he tells his father that there is a battle going on 3 kilometers ahead of them. He mentions that a few dozen monsters are swarming 10 people, and Garm tells the knights to move faster. Cain mentions that the knights won't make it in time, and he decides to go himself. He uses wind magic to travel fast, and the scene cuts to some knights battling orcs. The knights are on the verge of losing, and Cain then intervenes, and he starts fighting the orcs. Cain defeats the orcs easily with the use of his magic and sword skills, and he also defeats the orc general. Cain then introduces himself to the knights, as the 3rd son of Margrave Garm von Silford, and the knights from the Margraves group also arrive at the scene. They notice that the monsters are already dead, and Cain uses healing magic to heal all the knights. Cain then stores all the dead soldiers in his item box, and Garm arrives there. Garm notices the crest of Duke Santana on the carriage that the knights were protecting, and Princess Telestia and Lady Silk come out of the carriages. Garm mentions that he is glad to see that they are safe, and the ladies thank them for saving their lives. They are curious about Cain, and he introduces himself to them. Princess Telestia then suffers from a headache, and Cain asks her permission to calm her mind using magic. The princess permits him, and Cain uses his relax spell to calm both of their minds. The spell makes their hearts feel lighter, and all of their pain and exhaustion disappears. They both feel relaxed, and the princess then thanks Cain for saving their lives, and Lady Silk does the same. Silk mentions that she saw him through the window, and both his magic and swordsmanship were amazing. The princess and Lady Silk then fight over Cain, and Silk asks him what brings him out here. Cain mentions that he was on his way to the capital for his debut, and the ladies mention that they were also on their way to their debuts. They invite Cain to travel with them, and they take him to their carriage, and they leave. While in the carriage, Cain thinks that this is too cramped, and he asks them if he can sit on the other side. The girls mention that they are scared and they would feel safer if he is by their side. The princess then asks Cain to call her Tellies, and Lady Silk also asks him to call her Silk. Cain hesitates as they are both ladies of noble status higher than his own, but the girls still insist, and Cain has no choice but to do as they say. The guard then interrupts them, and he mentions that they are approaching the town of Renoma, and they should prepare to disembark. Cain asks him if he saw all that, and the guard mentions that he did, and Cain gets embarrassed. After arriving at the town, Cain tells them that he will see them tomorrow, and the princess mentions that she wants to be with him tonight as well. Lady Silk states the same, and Garm then intervenes, and he mentions that it won't be appropriate for a boy and a girl to share a room. The princess then mentions that the sight of the horrific things that happened today won't leave her mind, and Lady Silk wonders what they will do if monsters attack them during night. Garm mentions that he can arrange a maid for them, and Lady Silk mentions that Cain is the strongest person here, and the princess wants Cain to protect them. The ladies then ask Cain if he doesn't want to share a room with them, and Cain hesitantly agrees, but he states that their room should be large. Garm then tells Cain to act with prudence, and the girls are happy to share a room with Cain. The scene cuts to them arriving at their room, and the princess asks Cain if she could sleep next to him. Lady Silk asks the same thing, and the princess then mentions that Cain would have to sleep in the middle. Both Lady Silk and the princess then move their beds closer to Cain's, and Cain mentions that they should put the beds back to normal. The girls mention that nights are scary and they are afraid of the monsters, and they won't be able to sleep if they aren't close to him. Cain tries to refuse them, but it's no use, and he has no choice but to give in to their selfish demands. The next day Cain thinks that he wasn't able to sleep at all last night, and he mentions that he also spent the next few days without any sleep. After a few more days they arrive at the royal capital, and a knight welcomes them back. He notices that the girls are linking hands with a boy, and the girls mention that Cain saved them. The knight recognizes his name, and he introduces himself as Diam, the vice-captain of the Royal Chivalric Order. He mentions that the knights have already explained everything to him, and he thanks Cain for protecting the princess and the lady. The scene changes and Cain takes out the fallen soldiers from his item box. Diam thanks him for bringing them back, and he mentions that they normally have to burn their bodies where they fall, but thanks to Cain they will be able to return them to their families. Cain mentions that these soldiers fought their hardest to protect the two ladies, and Diam mentions that he will make sure to tell everyone that their efforts were not in vain. Diam then tells Cain that the king wants to have an audience with him, and the scene changes to Cain entering the throne room. The minister tells the court that the princess and Lady Silk were attacked by a group of 50 orcs on their way to the capital, and Cain saved them by eliminating all of them single-handedly. The nobles in the court find it hard to believe that a youngster like Cain was able to achieve all this. The king then commends Cain for a job well done, and he promotes Cain to the rank of baron. He also grants him 10 platinum coins and a mansion. A noble named Corgino then objects to this, and he mentions that they can't grant peerage to a 10-year-old. The king mentions that they can't keep such a talented man in a powerless position, and his decision will not be changed. Corgino then withdraws, and the king asks Cain if he will accept this reward. Cain thinks that he doesn't have a choice, and he accepts it with gratitude. The audience then ends, and the king invites Cain to the parlor. At the parlor Garm states that he never expected Cain to be granted peerage, and the king then enters the room. The king and the duke then thank Cain for saving their daughters, and the duke introduces himself as Silk's father Eric von Santana. Garm then states that he thought that only minors who lost their parents are allowed to receive peerage at a young age, and the king mentions that since Cain excels in both magic and swordsmanship, it wouldn't be right for the kingdom to leave him to his own devices. The king mentions that he will be receiving pay according to his status, and he states that he can ask Garm if he has any questions about the nobility. The king and the duke then ask Cain to take the hand of their daughters in marriage, and he states that they won't be formally married until they reach adulthood, but for now they can be engaged. Cain wonders why, and the king and the duke mention that Cain linked arms with their daughters, and they also slept in the same room. They mention that nobody will take them as brides after this, and the story goes back in time by a bit. We see that the king and the others are discussing what to do with Cain, and the minister suggests the idea of granting him peerage. He mentions that making him stand on his own will show them who he truly is, and after hearing that the young ladies are smitten with him, the king decides to make him their fiancé. He mentions that he will do everything he can to keep Cain in this kingdom, and the story returns to the present. The king and the duke ask Cain to take responsibility for his actions, and Cain agrees to the engagement, seeing no other way out of the situation. The ladies then mention that they will never forget the nights that they spent together, and the king asks Cain what he did with them. They ask Cain to show some discretion, and Cain apologizes. The story continues, and Cain is in the church to have a meeting with the gods. Cain mentions that he overdid things while leveling up, and he states that he would like to consult them about his status. Zenom mentions that his current numbers are quite inhuman, and he asks Cain if he would like to become a demigod. Zenom explains that demigods are in the same class as holy beasts and divine dragons, and he tells Cain that he should understand that there are limits to what he can do alone. Zenom then changes the subject, and he mentions that there isn't much entertainment in this realm, so he would like Cain to use his knowledge from his previous life to create some. Cain thinks that if he could bring items from his own world to this world, they would be a hit, and the gods ask him to do it. The scene then changes, and Cain is in a female clothes store where Rain is buying some clothes. Cain thinks that this is awkward, and he runs out of the store. Cain then notices Parma, the cat girl he saved from his summon monster, outside the store, and Parma asks Cain what he is doing here. Cain mentions that he is here for his debut, and he asks her what she is doing here. Parma states that she is training at her uncle's shop, and Parma then introduces her uncle to Cain as Tamanis. Cain then wonders if he can take a look around his shop, and he notices that they have a lot of different type of items in their shop. Cain then mentions that there is a certain recreational item that he would like to make, and he asks Tamanis if he would be willing to produce and sell it. Tamanis mentions that he will, and Cain tells him about Reversi. Tamanis thinks that this is great, and he thinks this would definitely sell. Cain then asks Tamanis if he can produce a prototype of this, and he gives him a gold coin to cover the expenses. Tamanis mentions that this is too much, and Cain tells him to think of it as an investment. Tamanis accepts, and he takes on the undertaking as the head of the Sarakeen company. Cain then leaves the store, and Rain gets angry at him for leaving without telling her. Rain mentions that she wanted Cain to see how she looks in her new clothes, and Cain mentions that he already knows that she looks great in everything she wears. This makes Rain happy, and she mentions that she is going to show all her outfits to Cain at home. They then go to their home, and Rain shows Cain all of her outfits, and she then asks Cain to show her his outfits. Sylvie then tells Cain that Tamanis has asked him to come to his shop, and Cain goes to his shop. Tamanis shows Cain the prototype, and Cain thinks that it looks exactly like he pictured it. Cain then plays it with Parma, and he shows how the game works. Tamanis thinks that this is great, and he is positive that this will sell. Cain then tells Tamanis to produce two different versions, one for the nobles, and one for the commoners. Cain explains that the nobles would prefer a fancier product, and he tells Tamanis to make 50 noble versions, and 1,000 of the regular versions. Tamanis then mentions that their company doesn't have this much funds, and Cain gives him 5 gold coins. Tamanis then thanks Cain for the investment, and he states that they should start by forming a contract and presenting this to the god of commerce. Tamanis mentions that once they form the contract, no one will be able to produce the same product for 3 years, and they offer the product to the god of commerce. Cain then asks Tamanis to produce an extra extravagant Reversi as he wants to give it to the royal household, and Tamanis agrees to do it. Cain then goes to his house, and Sylvie informs him that the debut ceremony is about to begin. Cain then leaves for the ceremony with his family, and Garm tells Cain that he will be drawing a lot of attention today because he got promoted to the position of Baron, and he should watch out for parents who are trying to introduce him to their daughters. Cain mentions that he will find a way to deal with them, and they then reach the palace. At the venue Cain notices Silk and Duke Eric, and Cain thinks that the Duke's smile scares him. Garm then introduces them to Cain, and Cain thinks that their last meeting wasn't public. Eric then thanks Cain for saving his daughter, and he hopes that they will have a favorable relationship. Silk then greets Cain, and Cain praises Silk's outfit, and he states that she looks like a princess. This makes Silk happy, and Eric then intervenes, and he mentions that Cain is too skilled with the ladies for a 10-year-old. Garm explains that this is because of his sister Rain, as she gets upset if he isn't careful around her. They then take their leave, and the king then enters the room with his family. The king greets everyone, and he asks them to do their best for the kingdom. The nobles then introduce themselves to the king, and it's finally Cain's turn. Cain greets the king and the princess, and he compliments the princess on her dress, saying that she looks like a goddess. This makes the princess happy, and the king asks Garm how he raised his child to be such a philanderer. Cain then thinks that the king's smile is also scary, and he then tells the king that he would like to present something to him. Cain then takes out the Reversi set from his item box, and he mentions that this is a game he developed in cooperation with the Sarakeen Company. The king thinks that this sounds interesting, and he would like to hear more about this later. The king then invites Cain to the parlor after the ceremony, and he mentions that he would also like to talk to him about his daughter. Garm then mentions that he didn't know that Cain was involved in the production of a game, and Cain mentions that he thought that he would need a lot of money to maintain his mansion after becoming a baron, and Garm understands. Garm then mentions that he has to go back to make his rounds, and he states that Cain should talk to the other children as a child would. Silk then approaches Cain, and she offers him a drink. They then talk, and Silk mentions that she is glad that she got to know Cain, as she now has someone else to talk to other than Tellys. Cain then asks Silk to stop using titles while talking to him, and Silk starts calling Cain by his name. A noble child named Habit then comes there, and he greets Silk. He thinks that Silk would be thrilled to be greeted by him, and Silk then greets him coldly. His lackeys tell Cain that he should at least introduce himself, and Cain then introduces himself as a baron. The others think that he is the son of a baron, and they belittle him for being a baron's son. Habit then asks Cain to apologize to him for not greeting him properly, and Silk tries to intervene, but Cain stops her, and he mentions that Habit will be the one apologizing. This makes Habit angry, and he asks Cain to step outside. They then step outside, and Silk asks Cain what he is going to do. Silk mentions that she is worried about Cain, and Habit then asks them to stop flirting. He mentions that his two lackeys have the protection of the god of magic, and Silk pretends to be afraid, and she clings to Cain. Habit's lackeys then try to use magic, and they forget their incantations. They then check their books, and they read the incantations from the books. Both the kids then use their magic, but their magical output is too low, and their attacks are harmless. They then try to use their magic on Cain again, and Silk interrupts them, and she mentions that she doesn't know how they got so confused, but Cain is not the son of a baron, he is a baron. She mentions that he is the third son of Margrave Garm von Silford, and he saved Princess Telestia, and her from an army of 50 orcs. Silk then tell them that they should be bowing to him, and they ask for Cain's forgiveness. They then leave, and Silk thinks Cain is quite devious for not attempting to right their misunderstanding. She mentions that she will have to tell Tellys about this, and Cain asks her to keep this a secret from her. Silk mentions that she will if he agrees to go on a date with her, and Tellys then comes there, and she asks them what they are talking about. Silk tries to tell her, but Cain stops her, and Tellys mentions that touching an unmarried woman's lips is scandalous, and she states that she will have to tell Duke Eric about this. Tellys then asks them to tell her the truth, and Silk tells her that Cain promised to take her on a date. Tellys mentions that this is not fair, and she asks him to take her on a date as well. Cain agrees, and the king then asks Cain where he is planning to take his daughter. Later Cain plays Reversi with the king, and the king thinks that this game is fun. Cain mentions that he is going to share this with the entire kingdom, and Eric then tells Cain that he has heard that Cain has arranged a date with Silk. He mentions that the plans of their engagement are still a secret, and both the king and Eric ask Cain to be careful on their date. The story continues, and the Minister Magna gives Cain the keys and the map for his new mansion. He mentions that the king is meeting with someone right now, but he wanted to play Reversi with him when he heard that he was coming, and it was pretty hard to talk him out of it. Cain thinks that he will be able to return home early, but the Duke then comes into the room, and he asks Cain to play a match of Reversi with him. Magna and some other nobles also ask Cain to play a match with him, and Cain thinks that he can't go home early. The scene then cuts to Cain going to see his mansion, and Cain notices that the mansion is really run down. He notices that even the lights are not functioning, and he uses a light spell to help him explore the mansion. Cain explores all the different rooms in the mansion, and he notices that the mansion is quite filthy. He thinks that he should do a little cleaning, and he uses the spells, all clean, and all repair to clean and repair the mansion. The mansion is now as good as new, and Sylvie then arrives in the mansion with some other maids. Sylvie mentions that she is happy that Cain asked her to come here, and she states that she will work hard with the maids here. Cain's new butler then introduces himself as Colin, and he states that Seabass has told him a lot about Cain. Sylvie then states that she will get started on the cleaning, and she directs the maid to clean different parts of the house. The maids notice that the house doesn't have a speck of dust in it, and Cain tells Sylvie that he cleaned the house with magic. Sylvie then mentions that she is going to prepare to receive all of Cain's things, and Colin mentions that they are going to take care of things here, and Cain should return to Lord Garm's mansion. Cain then remembers that his brothers are going to come home today, and the scene cuts to Cain meeting his brothers. Cain's brothers mention that they didn't expect Cain to be granted peerage before them, and Rain states that she can't wait to see Cain's mansion. Cain's brothers mention if Rain is sure about this, as the mansion is quite run down, and scary things might show up there. Rain states that Cain is going to protect her, and Cain mentions that nothing scary is going to show up. The scene changes to Cain's parents and sister coming to his mansion, and they are surprised to see that it looks like a brand new house. Garm states that this mansion was falling apart when he was here a few years ago, and he wonders if Cain did something. Cain mentions that he used magic to repair and clean it, and he then gives his family a tour of the mansion. Garm states that the mansion is lacking in works of art, and he states that nobles are fond of artwork, and they decorate their mansion with paintings, vases, and mounted monsters. Cain mentions that he has put up a mounted monster, and they then hear Sylvie crying for help. Cain goes to check it out, and he notices that the maids are afraid of the mounted dragon. Cain thinks that he forgot to explain this to them, and he explains that this is a mounted red dragon. Garm wonder why Cain has such a thing here, and Cain states that he defeated this monster a while back in the forest. Garm states that even a party of Arank adventurers can barely take down a red dragon, and he can't believe that Cain took it out by himself. Garm then mentions that Cain should have explained things to the maids, and he states that a mounted red dragon is worth 1,000 platinum coins. Cain thinks that this equals to 10 billion yen, and he then hears his sister and mother crying out. They go to check things out, and Rain wonders what Cain has done to the toilet, as it shoots out water at them. Cain mentions that he used magic to do that, and Rain asks them to do this to their toilet as well. Garm thinks that they shouldn't make such a big fuss over a toilet, and they then tell him to try it out for himself. Garm tries it out, and he likes it as well. Garm then mentions that the visitors will be pleased with this, and he explains that nobles who come into ownership of a mansion have to hold a debut party for it. The scene cuts to Cain thinking what he should do about the party, and Colin states that he has already prepared a list of the guests he should invite to the party. Cain checks out the list, and he wonders if he doesn't have to invite the king. Colin states that only counts or higher-ranked nobles can invite the king, and Cain then finds out that he will also need gifts and food for the nobles. Cain wonders what he should gift the nobles, and Sylvie states that Cain should treat the guests to his own brand of hospitality instead of adhering to formalities. Cain then creates some fancy glasses for the party, and he mentions that he is going to give the glasses as a gift to the nobles. Sylvie thinks that the guests are going to love this, and Cain makes more glasses. The scene then cuts to the chef serving a dish, and he states that he has made it according to the recipe that he received from Cain. Cain then asks Sylvie to taste the food for him, and Sylvie thinks that this is delicious. Cain states that this is called Hamburg steak, and she then tastes the drink. She thinks that the drink is fizzy and bubbly, and Cain mentions that this is sparkling wine, and he used magic to make the regular wine fizzy. He asks Sylvie if the bubbles are too strong, and Sylvie states that she will need to try some more to find it out. Sylvie then tries a few bottles of it, and Cain takes that to mean that the wine is good. The king then summons Cain into the castle, and he states that he has not received an invitation to his mansion's debut party. He asks him why he sent invitations to Eric and Magna but not him. Cain mentions that he was planning on giving him the invitation in person, but he couldn't find the right opportunity for it. He then gives the king an invitation, and this makes the king happy. Cain is then glad that he followed Colin's advice and brought an invitation with him. The king mentions that he is going to bring Telestia with him, and the duke states that he is also going to bring Silk with him. The scene then changes to Cain's house, and the maids are surprised to hear that the king will be attending the party. They wonder why, and Cain tells them that the third princess Telestia is his fiancée, and this surprises them even more. Cain then mentions that he is counting on the maids to make everyone feel welcome, and the maids state that they will do their best. The scene then cuts to the party, and Cain greets the nobles and he leads them inside. The Duke notices the red-mounted dragon, and he mentions that he never thought that he would actually see one of them in real life. Silk is excited to know that she will be living here one day, and Colin then states that it's time for Cain to offer his greetings. Cain then offers his greetings to everyone, and he makes a toast. The guests drink the wine, and they love how it's cold and it pops in their mouth. Cain mentions that he used water magic to chill it, and he states that the glasses are his gift to all the attendees, and they can take it back with them. The king then comes to the party, and he tells Cain that he has never seen a glass like this. He then tastes the wine, and he likes it as well. Cain then serves the Hamburg steak to the king, and the king absolutely loves the steak. Teles loves the steak as well, and the queen then asks Cain how water is spurting out of his toilet. She mentions that he must put that in the palace as well, and the king wonders what they are talking about. The queen tells the king to try it out for himself, and the king tries it out. The king then asks Cain why he didn't tell him about this sooner, and he asks him to put one in the palace tomorrow. Cain agrees, and Colin then tells Cain that Marquis Corgino is here. Cain goes to greet the Marquis, and the Marquis then goes inside, but Cain doesn't warn him about the mounted dragon. The Marquis gets scared after seeing the dragon, and Cain explains that it's a mounted monster. The Marquis then talks trash about Cain's party, and Sylvie serves him the wine. Corgino tastes the wine, and he likes it, but he badmouths it. Cain then serves him the Hamburg steak, and he loves it as well, but he also badmouths it. Cain then gets pissed off at him, and Colin states that he shouldn't be rude to a Marquis. Cain then gets an idea, and he presents the glasses to the Marquis as a gift. The Marquis states that he likes the glasses, and he asks Cain to give him 100 of them. Cain states that he can't do that as he is going to give them as gifts to everyone, and the Marquis then talks rudely to Cain, and Cain then checks the position of the king with his search spell. The king then comes close to the Marquis, and Cain obstructs his view of the king. Cain then steps aside, and the king witnesses the Marquis's tyrannical behavior. The king mentions that he is going to rethink some future events if this is how the Marquis behaves, and the Marquis mentions that he was impressed with the glasses and the food, and he was just asking Cain how they were made. The king states that it's good then, and he asks the Marquis to conduct himself in a manner that sets an example for the other nobles. The Marquis understands, and he takes his leave. The king then realizes that Cain just used him to teach a lesson to the Marquis, and he gets angry at Cain. The story continues, and Cain visits Diam to give him some of the monster materials that he has, as he was advised by the minister Magnet to do so. Diam then takes Cain to a room, and he tells him to put the materials here. Cain mentions that this room is too small for the materials, and Diam wonders if they are all like the red dragon he has in his mansion. Cain states that they are not as impressive as that, and he mentions that he just has an earth dragon. Diam thinks that even an A-rank party can barely take that down, and Cain states that he doesn't know much about it, but it's a big one. Diam then tells Cain to take out the monsters on the training ground, and he states that the knights will move them later. Cain then takes out the monsters, and Diam is surprised to see so many powerful monsters. Diam can't believe that a kid could kill all these, and he asks Cain if he is a hero, or a disciple of God. Cain hesitates for a moment, and he mentions that he is just the son of Margrave Garm. Diam then mentions that he won't probe too deeply, and he states that it will take some time to appraise this many monsters. Cain states that it's fine, and he mentions that he will come when it's done. He tries to leave, but Diam stops him, and he mentions that he would like Cain to help him train the knights, and meet their captain. He mentions that their captain loves strong people, and he would like to show off what Cain can do. Cain hesitantly agrees, and Diam introduces him to the knights, as the Baron who defeated 50 orcs. Cain asks him where the captain is, and Diam states that she will be here when the mock battle begins. Cain wonders if it's going to be some scary dude, and Diam states that Cain doesn't need to worry about that. Diam then begins the mock battle, and one of the knights states that the Royal Chivalric Order shouldn't fight a child. Diam states that he can go first if he is worried, and the knight faces off against Cain. The knight grants Cain the first move, and Cain uses the boost spell to accelerate and finish the battle. Diam then tells Cain that this was an excellent battle, and he should take on the entire order next. Cain is then about to battle the Order of Knights, and a girl shows up there, and she mentions that an entire order of knights shouldn't point their swords at a child. She asks Cain if he is alright, and she states that he will be okay now that she is here. The girl then asks Diam why he didn't stop this, and Diam mentions that this is the boy who annihilated 50 orcs and saved the princess. Hearing this, the girl gets excited, and she asks Cain to have a duel with her. Diam addresses her as captain, and he mentions that she should introduce herself, and the captain states that they will talk with their swords. The duel then begins, and the captain uses boost, and she attacks Cain. They then fight a high-speed battle, and the other knights are astounded to see this. Cain then uses the clock up spell to accelerate even more, and he defeats the captain. The captain then mentions that she has decided that she is going to marry Cain. This surprises everyone, and Cain states that he can't marry her as he is only 10 years old, and he knows nothing about her. The captain then introduces herself as Tefana von Liebert, and she states that she holds the title of Viscount, and she is the daughter of Duke Liebert, who oversees the Northern Forest. She states that Cain doesn't need to worry about their age difference since she is an elf, and she will live for at least 300 years, and she is quite confident about her looks. Cain then mentions that she is a duke's daughter, and she can't make decisions about her own marriage. Tefana states that Cain doesn't need to worry about that as when she left home she told her father that she would only return when she has found a marriage partner. Cain then states that it may be fine for her, but he still has to consult his father, and lots of other people. Tefana states that it's true, and she tells Diam to arrange a meeting with the king. Cain thinks that this is the worst thing that could happen, and Diam then drags Cain to the king. The scene changes to them talking with the king, and the king asks Cain why he is here. Tefana then mentions that she has decided that Cain and her are going to be married. This surprises everyone, and the king asks Cain to explain everything from the beginning. Cain explains everything, and the king asks him if he hasn't told her about Telestia and Miss Silk. Cain states that he didn't as this matter was supposed to be confidential, and Garm then asks Cain if he even realizes the position that Captain Tefana holds. Cain states that he only knows that she is the captain of knights, and the king then explains that the territory she comes from was originally a nation of elves. He mentions that the elves are all beautiful, and because of that they were often captured and sold into slavery, but here in Esfort, as per the first king's dying wish, there is no discrimination based on race. The king states that Liebert territory is no different than a self-governed nation, and Tefana is essentially a princess. The king then informs Tefana that Cain is already engaged to Princess Telestia and Miss Silk, and Tefana states that this means that Cain is extraordinary enough to be recognized by both the king and Duke Eric, and this just makes her want to marry Cain all the more. The king then acknowledges her feelings for him, and he states that she should first write a letter to her father Lyson, and earn his permission, and they will talk about this after that. Tefana agrees, and she takes Cain with her to write the letter. The king then states that he can't believe that Cain even defeated the captain of knights, and he wonders how he is so powerful. Diam then mentions that Cain did react when he asked him if he was a hero or disciple of the gods, and Magnus states that they can test him by showing him a special book. Later Cain meets Diam in the training grounds, and Diam mentions that Cain looks exhausted. Cain states that he is fighting Tefana ever since that day, and she never lets him go until his endurance has reached its limit. Diam states that thanks to him their captain has gotten even stronger, and Cain asks Diam if Tefana has always been like that. Diam states that she has, and she always leaves all the night business to him. Tefana then comes looking for Cain, and before she could find him Diam drags Cain away, and he mentions that the king wants to see him. The scene then changes to Cain meeting with the king, and Cain asks them why they are all here. The king mentions that he has called Cain here because he wants to show him something, and Magnus shows Cain an emperor-level magic text that has been passed down in the royal family. He states that it was written by the first king Uyatara Hirasawa, and Cain mentions that even the magic texts at the palace mage's library only went up to mega level. He looks at the book, and he thinks that he has never seen this spell, and he mentions that he knew that there was an even higher level. The king mentions that none of them can read this text, as it was written in a language called Japanese, and they only knew that this was an emperor-level magic text because they were told so. The king then asks Cain who he really is, and Cain thinks that he can't hide it anymore. He wonders if he is going to lose everything if they find out the truth, and he mentions that he will tell them the truth, but they have to promise him to not tell anyone about this. The king promises him, and Cain mentions that he has memories from his past life. Memories of a different land called Japan, and their first king also came from there. He apologizes for not telling them about this sooner, and Garm then asks him if he is really his son. Cain mentions that there is no doubt about this, as the gods told him this himself, and everyone is surprised to hear that Cain has met the gods. Cain states that he has met them several times at the church, and Garm then asks Cain to show them his stats. Cain then shows them his real stats, and they notice that Cain has the title God's Chosen, and he has level 10 blessings from all the gods. The king then mentions that if he told them about this title sooner, then everyone in this kingdom including himself would have bowed down to him. Cain states that this is not what he wants, and he mentions that he may have memories from his past life, but he is content with his life right now. He states that he had lost his parents and grandfather in his previous world, but here he is blessed with a wonderful circle of friends and family, and he can live a happy life. Cain then apologizes for keeping his past a secret, and he asks everyone to treat him the same way that they always have. The king understands, and Tefana then comes into the room looking for Cain. She mentions that she has received her father's approval for her marriage, and she takes Cain away with her. The king then tells everyone that they should not speak to anyone about this matter, and he hopes that Cain would protect this country, his family, and everyone else who seeks his help. Later Telestia and Silk ask Cain how he ended up being engaged to Tefana, and Cain states that this just happened after their mock battle. Silk wonders how many more fiancés he is going to have, and Tefana then comes looking for Cain. She drags him away saying that they should have a mock battle again, and Cain can't do anything about it. The story continues, and Cain is reading the Emperor-level magic text. After reading the text, Cain finds out that the first king Yuya Terahirasawa really did come from Japan, and it's written that Yuya was involved in an accident in Japan, and instead of dying he was summoned to this world. Telestia and Silk then come looking for Cain, and they ask him what he is doing. Seeing the book, Silk thinks that Cain must be studying as the academy entrance exams are coming, and the girls state that they also want to study with Cain. Cain apologizes to them, and he states that he doesn't have time to study with them today, and he states that he will do it some other time. Cain then leaves the room, and outside he meets Tefana. Tefana asks Cain if he wants to have a mock battle outside the capital tomorrow, and Cain mentions that they will do it some other time, and he runs away. Cain then returns to his mansion, and he states that today is an important day for him, as it's his 12th birthday, and today he can finally register as an adventurer. The scene cuts to Cain visiting the Adventurers Guild, and he bumps into someone while looking around. The man asks him if this is his first time here, and Cain mentions that he is here to register as an adventurer. The man tells Cain to be careful as he only has a single life, and he leaves. Cain thinks that he feels like he has seen that red hair before, and he then goes to register. The receptionist then gives him a form to fill, and Cain wonders if he should write Baron with his name. He thinks that he doesn't want anyone to treat him differently because of his status, and he refrains from mentioning it. The receptionist then takes the form, and she gives him a guild card, and she states that he will start as a G rank. Cain then remembers that his teachers were D rank, and he wonders what they are up to right now. The receptionist then remembers that she forgot to introduce herself, and she introduces herself as Risha. A guy then comes to Risha, and he tells her to ditch the kid, and hang out with him. Cain can't believe that this is happening again, and the guy tells Cain to return home like a good kid. He then tries to attack Cain, but Cain dodges, and he does the same when the other party members try to attack him. The guy then tries to draw his sword, but before he could, the red-haired man from earlier comes there, and the guy recognizes him as Claude from Ice Flame. Claude intimidates them, and the guy and his party run away in fear. Cain thanks Claude for helping him out, and Claude states that he stopped them for their own good. He mentions that he could tell that Cain is strong by the way he moves, and Cain then introduces himself. Claude mentions that he likes Cain, and he asks him to have a drink with him. They then have a drink, and Claude states that Cain seems like he is well trained. Cain mentions that he has been training since he was little, and he even had adventurers as tutors. Cain then asks Claude what is Ice Flame, and Claude states that it's the name of his party. He states that he uses a flame sword, and his wife is an ice mage, so they are named Ice Flame. He mentions that Cain should also find a trustworthy party, so that he can take big quests, and that way his rank will go up quickly. Claude then shows Cain his golden guild card, and Cain is excited to see that Claude is a A-rank adventurer. Claude mentions that he is still inferior to the first king who was supposedly SSS rank, and he states that the SSS rank card is black. Claude's wife then comes there, and she scolds him for drinking in the middle of day. Claude's wife Lena mentions that they just accepted a quest, and they should get onto it. Cain then introduces himself to Lena, and Lena thinks that Cain is cute, and she mentions that Cain can come to her if anything happens. Cain thanks her, and Lena then takes Claude away for their quest. Afterwards Cain looks at the quests for G-rankers, and he finds a goblin slaying quest, and he notices that the reward is per goblin defeated, with no upper limit. He thinks that this is perfect, and he takes the quest. Outside the guild Cain meets Tefana, and he asks her why she is here. Diam mentions that the Order is training outside the capital today, and Tefana wonders what Cain is doing. Cain states that he is going on his first adventure, and Tefana mentions that she will come with him. She states that it's her duty to accompany her husband on his first adventure, and she then drags Cain with her to the forest. Tefana runs around the forest with Cain while looking for the goblins, and Cain uses his search magic to find them. They then head towards the goblins, and they notice that the goblins are attacking a carriage. Cain treats the carriage's driver with his healing spell, and Tefana fights the goblins while Cain protects the driver. Tefana easily defeats the goblins, and Cain supports her with his spell. Tefana then takes out all of the goblins, and she asks Cain to praise her. Right then some green lizards show up there, and Cain asks Tefana to take the man and run away. He states that he will handle it this time, and Cain uses a light spell to blind the green lizards. He then uses ice magic to defeat the lizards, and Tefana thinks that her husband is amazing. Sometime later Millie and Nina arrive to take care of the green lizards, but they don't see any of them in the area. They notice that there is a big hole in the ground, and they then go back. Cain then goes to the guild, and he tells Risha that he has defeated some green lizards. Risha mentions that quests for green lizards are meant for D-ranker if it's a single one, and C-rankers if it's a group of them. Cain states that he took out 30 of them, and Risha then informs the chief about this. The chief meets Cain, and he mentions that he will handle his case since the guild master is in a meeting. He asks Cain if he really defeated green lizards, and Cain states that he defeated 30 of them. The chief mentions that Cain is just a G rank so he can't defeat 30 green lizards, and Risha mentions that it's not right to accuse him without evidence. The chief mentions that Cain is just a commoner according to the registry, and he must be trying to swindle the guild for some money. The chief mentions that Cain must be punished for this, and he revokes his guild card. Cain can't believe that his guild card is being revoked, and the guild master then comes into the room, and he asks what's going on. The chief states that this kid won't admit that he cheated, and Cain mentions that he did not cheat. The guild master then asks the chief how he deduced that Cain cheated, and the chief mentions that no one can kill 30 green lizards on the day they register. The guild master laughs hearing this, and he mentions that the chief still has a lot to learn. The guild master then asks Tefana to enter the room, and Tefana hugs Cain addressing him as her husband. This surprises the chief, and Cain wonders what Tefana is doing here. Tefana states that she was here to discuss countermeasures against goblins and green lizards, and the guildmaster then reveals that Cain is a baron. He mentions that Cain is the hero who saved the princess and Lady Silk, and the chief states that his noble status wasn't mentioned in the registry. Cain states that he didn't want to be treated as a noble here, and the guildmaster reveals that Cain is also the son of Margrave Garm, and if he marries Tefana then he will also be his brother-in-law. Cain is surprised to find out that the guildmaster is Tefana's brother, and the chief then apologizes to Cain for insulting him. Cain wonders if insulting a noble is a crime, and Tefana mentions that a commoner could be executed for insulting a noble. Cain states that he doesn't want that, and he accepts the chief's apology. Cain then asks if the guild will accept his green lizards, and the guild master states that they will. The guild master then mentions that it won't be good if a G rank brings back 30 lizards, and he promotes Cain to C rank. Tefana mentions that C rank isn't good enough as Cain is even stronger than her, and the chief thinks that this would mean that Cain is the strongest in the kingdom. The guild master mentions that nobody could attain B rank without subjugating some bandits, but he thinks that nobody would complain if it's the hero Cain. He then promotes Cain to A rank, and the chief is surprised to hear that Cain became a ranker on his first day. The guild master states that Cain will still have to subjugate some bandits later, and Cain wonders if bringing them in would be okay. The guild master mentions that it would be fine, and he then tells the chief to take care of the paperwork. The guild master mentions that he was surprised when he heard that Cain was engaged to his sister, but after seeing Cain his mind has been put at ease. He tells Cain to take care of his sister, and Tefana states that she has already performed love's joint task with Cain. Cain tells Tefana to not say such misleading things, and the guild master states that Cain doesn't need to worry as he is already aware that his sister refers to mock battles as dates. Cain is glad to hear this, and we see that the gods are watching this. The god of magic thinks that it was too much to give Cain level 10 protection, and Xena mentions that they need Cain to get even stronger as Aaron's seal will soon be broken. This surprises the other gods, and they think that they really need Cain to become stronger, and they wonder how they can do that. They think that there is someone who can make a fine master to him, and the scene then changes to Cain getting his gold guild card. Later Silk and Telestia ask Cain if they can study together now, and Cain mentions that they can. Tefana then comes there, and she mentions that yesterday they had a forest date, so next they should have a beach date. Silk and Telestia then get angry at Cain for hanging out with Tefana after turning them down, and they make him grovel. The story continues, and Cain wakes up in bed. Sylvie then comes into his room, and she apologizes for waking him up late on the day of his academy entrance exams. She then hurries up and gets Cain ready, and she mentions that she will regret it forever if Cain is late because of her. Cain tells her to not worry about it, and he states that he won't be late. Cain then leaves, and he teleports directly at the academy. He thinks that he knew that he would make it in time, and at the academy Cain tells his name to the receptionist, and he gets his exam number. The receptionist gives him a list, and he tells Cain to go to Class A, and Cain notices that no one he knows is in the list, and he wonders where they are. He then goes into the class, and he thinks that maybe Telestia and Silk are in a different classroom. The teacher then comes into the class, and she starts the test. She states that if anyone is found cheating then they will be ejected from the premises, and she mentions that they have 2 hours for the exam. The exam then begins, and Cain notices that the arithmetic and writing is easy, and the history questions are all the things that any noble would know. Cain then begins writing, and he relaxes after finishing the test. The teacher asks him if he can really afford to relax, and Cain mentions that he is already done. The teacher states that it's only been half an hour, and the scene then cuts to the end of the exam, and the teacher tells the students to leave their answer sheets on the desk, and proceed to the magic ability assessment test. The scene cuts to the magic test, and the teacher tells everyone to use their strongest attack to hit the target. Cain asks her if he can really use his full power, and the teacher states that there is a defensive barrier around the training area, so he can go all out. The test then begins, and we notice that all the other students are really weak when compared to Cain. It is then Cain's turn, and he thinks that he should limit his magic to beginner level, and uses a fire bullet. The attack pierces the walls and the barrier, and it destroys the area beyond it. The teacher wonders what just happened, and Cain states that he just used fire bullet, and the teacher mentions that a beginner level spell can't cause this much damage. They then make sure that no one was hurt in the attack, and the teacher tells them to head to the swordsmanship exam. At the swordsmanship exam the teacher introduces the applicants to the special guests from the Adventurers Guild, and Cain notices that Claude is also there. He asks Cain what he is doing here, and Cain states that he is here for the entrance exam. Claude then states that he will be his opponent, and Cain tries to refuse, but the teacher doesn't let him, and he ends up fighting Claude. Cain thinks that Claude might be pretty skilled since he is A rank, and he uses boost to attack him. Claude defends, and they then start exchanging blows. Claude thinks that Cain is even stronger than the other examiners, and Cain states that he shouldn't put this much force in an exam. But Claude still keeps on going, and he even uses boost. The teacher then stops them, and he mentions that they shouldn't have a mock battle of this intensity in an exam as it's making the other applicants scared. Claude then tells Cain that they should do this again sometime, and Cain thinks that he would like to avoid it if possible. The teacher then sends Cain home, as his exam is over, and he mentions that he should come back when they announce the results. The scene then changes to Cain arriving at home, and Sylvie asks him how it went. Cain states that he finished it alright, and he thinks that he might pass. Sylvie then states that they should celebrate it with a feast, and Cain tries to refuse, but his stomach starts growling, and Sylvie states that she is going to start the preparations. Afterwards, Cain is in the palace, and the king asks him what's going on. Cain explains that the teacher told him to use his full power, and she mentioned that it would be fine since there was a barrier. He knew that he shouldn't use intermediate or emperor-level magic, so he only used a beginner-level spell, but it still destroyed the barrier. The king then asks Cain if he can really use emperor-level magic, and Cain states that he can, but he doesn't know what will happen to his surroundings once he does. He asks the king if he can try it out somewhere, and the king states that he can't. Cain then apologizes for his mistakes, and the king asks him where Cain took the exams, as both Telestia and Silk weren't able to see him at the exam site. Cain states that he checked in at the south entrance, and he went to the room he was directed to. The king then asks Cain if he knows why the academy has two entrances, and Cain states that he does, and he mentions that the north entrance is for the nobles, and the south one is for the commoners. The king then asks Cain again what entrance he used, and Cain realizes that he used the entrance for the commoners. The king mentions that Telestia was furious that she didn't get to see him, and Eric states that the headmaster of the academy even came to see him. The story then goes back in time, and we see Eric's meeting with the headmaster. The headmaster mentions that they had a lot of problems in this year's examination, and he explains that this time a commoner got perfect scores in his exam, and he even destroyed the training area, and fought an A-rank adventurer. Eric then laughs, and he mentions that the name of the student must be Cain. The headmaster wonders how he knows that, and Eric states that Cain really put up a good show this time. He thinks that the Prime Minister would have his hands full trying to pay the repair bill, and the story returns to the present, and the Prime Minister shows him the repair bill. The king then warns Cain again to not overdo things, and he mentions that the results would be announced today, and tells Cain to see them for himself. The scene cuts to Cain checking out the results at the academy, and he notices that he is placed first. Silk then meets Cain, and she mentions that her father told her all about the uproar he caused. She mentions that Telestia isn't here today, but she was really angry cause she didn't get to see him on exam day. She states that Cain should look forward to seeing her in the school's uniform, and she leaves. Cain then notices his sister at the academy, and she mentions that Cain hasn't visited their mansion in a long time. Cain apologizes, and Rain then congratulates him for being at the top of his class, and she mentions that he should prepare for the speech at the entrance ceremony. Cain is surprised to hear about this, and he tries to back out of it, but Rain states that it has already been announced. At Cain's mansion we see that Sylvie is fidgeting about the results, and Cain then comes home, and he tells her that he got first place in the exams. Sylvie states that she had faith that Cain could do this, and she mentions that she will prepare a feast for him. The scene then cuts to the entrance ceremony, and Cain notices that his parents are also there. Cain then meets the princess, and Miss Silk, and they think that Cain looks cool in his uniform. Cain states that they look great as well, and they then go to the auditorium. The other guys are jealous to see Cain sit with the princess, and Miss Silk, and the girls thinks that Cain is dreamy. The ceremony then begins, and the headmaster summons Cain on the stage for his speech. In his speech Cain introduces himself, and he mentions that this academy was created by the first king to educate everyone equally. He mentions that he plans to make friends with people without any regards to their bloodline, and he hopes that they can all get along. The students then announce that the king will like to say a few words next, and the king congratulates everyone for entering the academy. He mentions that this year there are some irregular students here, and he hopes that the teachers will do their best. Cain wonders why he feels like he is being warned, and his parents feel embarrassed. The scene then cuts to Cain attending his first class, and he sits with Telestia and Silk. The teacher then comes into the classroom, and she introduces herself as Elka von Portley, their homeroom teacher. She tells everyone to choose their courses, and Cain thinks that he is going to choose adventuring. Telestia states that he should choose the nobility course, and Silk states that he could also choose adventuring with it. Cain then decides to choose adventuring, nobility, magic, and magic items, and Telestia states that she will be choosing nobility and internal affairs, so she could one day be able to manage Cain's domain. Silk states that she will choose nobility and commerce, so she could be of help to him in the future. The class then ends, and outside the class Cain notices that some nobles are bullying Parma. They are telling her to drop out of school so they can get in Class A, and Cain stops them, and he states that nobles and commoners should be treated equally here. Cain then notices that it's Habit and his lackeys, and he mentions that nobility means nothing here. He then states that this girl is his friend, and Habit's lackeys mentions that Cain should side with the nobility as he is also a noble. Cain mentions that he only sides with his friends, and Habit states that he will just tell his father to ruin her entire family. The princess and Miss Silk then intervene, and Habit and his lackeys apologize to them. They mention that they should be apologizing to Parma instead, and they hesitantly apologize to her, and they run away. Cain then apologizes for taking so long to save her, and Parma states that it was alright, and she mentions that she is glad to be in the same school as him. The girls then state that Cain seems awfully close to Parma, and they mention that they will need to talk with her, and they ask Cain to sit on his heels while they talk. Cain does so, and he wonders what they are talking about. He wonders if they are setting up an alliance or something, and Cain then hears a voice in his mind. The voice tells him that he seems like an interesting kid, and they should have a chat. Cain wonders who it is, and the voice tells him to come to the library. Cain goes to the library, and he gets teleported to a mansion. The man inside asks Cain if he would like sugar in his coffee, and Cain wonders who he is. The man states that he has been waiting to meet him, and Cain notices that he looks just like the first king. The scene cuts to them having coffee, and Cain drinks the coffee, and he thinks that it's delicious. The story continues with Cain having coffee with the man from before, and he mentions that he has heard about Cain from Xenom and the others. The man then introduces himself as Yuya Tera Hirasawa, and Cain recognizes him as the first king of Esfort. He mentions that Esfort was founded 300 years ago, and he wonders if Yuya is a ghost. Yuya mentions that Cain can use judgment to find that out, and Cain checks Yuya's stats. He finds out that Yuya is the god of creation, and Yuya mentions that this world is called Fab-Neil, and he is the one who created it. Because of this he still looks the same even after 300 years, and Cain can't believe this. Yuya then explains that he brought Cain here because Xenom and the others wanted him to train Cain. Cain thinks that he already has a hard time with the strength he is right now, but Yuya tells Cain to try to take a cookie from him. Cain tries to take the cookie, but he can't do it. Cain then wonders why he needs to be that strong, and Yuya states that there is someone that Cain needs to fight. He explains that it's someone who made people fight and kill each other 300 years ago, and Cain wonders how someone can do that. Yuya states that he used an oracle to sow distrust of other countries in everyone's subconsciousness, and he is called Aaron the evil god. He mentions that his companions and him managed to seal Aaron 300 years ago, but recently the seal has started to loosen, and if nothing is done Aaron will be resurrected. Cain wonders why Yuya can't just seal him again, and Yuya states that he is a god of this world now, and he can't interfere with Xenom's world. Yuya mentions that Cain's previous life is also related to this, and Cain asks him what he means. Yuya then teleports him to the ocean, and he mentions that from this point he is his teacher, and he will tell him more about this when he reaches the mansion where they just met. He explains that Cain can't use teleportation magic, and he states that he needs to be at least level 600 if he wants to stand a chance against Aaron. Cain thinks that he is at level 300 right now, and Yuya states that this might take some time. Cain wonders what he is going to do about school till then, and Yuya informs him that time flows differently here, and 1 year here equals to a day in his world. Yuya then leaves, and Cain thinks that he has no choice but to do this. Cain then enters the forest, and within moments of entering it he encounters many monsters. Meanwhile back at his world Sylvie is worried about Cain, and Telestia and Silk are also looking for him. They mention that they can't find him either in the school or at his home, and Sylvie states that he has been missing from yesterday. She wonders if he was caught in some kind of accident, and Telestia states that Cain must be fine, because he is Cain. She states that she will wait for him here until he comes home, and we see that Cain is still fighting monsters. It has been too long, and Cain is filled with negativity. He wonders if he will ever be able to return home, and he thinks that he hasn't had a good sleep in months. He then hears a voice, and he heads towards it. He notices that the voice is coming from an injured beast, and he states that he is going to put him out of his misery. Cain then remembers that the entire reason he ended up here was because he was trying to protect someone, and he apologizes to the beast. He then tries to heal it, but he notices that he is out of magic, but he doesn't give up, and he forces the magic out of him. This makes Cain faint, and the beast protects him while he is unconscious. Cain then wakes up, and he notices that the beast was protecting him this entire time. He asks the beast if he is all alone, and he states that he is also alone right now, and he asks him if he would like to come with him. The beast agrees, and Cain names him Haku. Cain then continues on his quest to reach the mansion, and he thinks that thanks to Haku he regained something important, and he now knows that he can't give in, no matter how hard things get. The scene then cuts to Cain reaching the mansion, and Yuya welcomes him. He thinks that Cain has gotten bigger, and Cain states that it has been 4 years. Yuya then notices that Cain has a Fenrir with him, and he mentions that a Fenrir is a holy beast. Yuya can't believe that the Fenrir trusts him so much, and he mentions that Cain should form a contract with it. Yuya explains that forming a contract will let Cain summon Haku anytime he wants, and Cain forms a contract with him. Yuya then mentions that Cain's training is still not over, and he states that he will be training with Darain next. Cain then reminds Yuya that he has to first explain what he meant by Eren being connected to his previous life, and Yuya mentions that they will talk about it. The scene then cuts to Cain training with Darain, and Darain defeats him with a single attack. Cain then wakes up in an unfamiliar place, and he goes downstairs. He is greeted by a lady, and she introduces herself as Ruri, Darain's wife, and she states that this is their house. Ruri then tells Cain that she will soon have some food ready, and Cain notices a baby dragon. He tries to befriend the dragon, but Haku gets jealous at this, and he picks a fight with it. Cain tries to stop the two of them from fighting, and Ruri then makes them stop by threatening them with food. The food is then ready, and Cain cries after eating it. Darain wonders if it's not good, and Cain states that it's delicious. He mentions that it's been forever since he ate something this good, and Darain remembers that Cain was in the wilderness for 4 years. Darain then tells him to eat his fill, and Ruri states that she will make more since Cain will be staying here for a while. Cain thinks that being treated this well reminds him of his home, and the scene cuts to Telestia and Silk learning how to cook in Cain's house. They think that they want to make Cain happy when he comes home, and Sylvie states that they should work harder as the road to cooking is very tough. The scene then changes to Cain training with Darain, and Darain thinks that Cain is doing well. He mentions that at first Cain couldn't even make it back to their house, and the story then goes forward in time by a year. Cain is still training with Darain, and he then remembers what Yuya told him about his relation with Eren. Yuya told him that Eren used to be the god of amusement in Xenom's world, and there are no games in their world because there is no longer a god of amusement. He explained that Eren used an oracle to make innocent people participate in a death game, and as a result he was banished from the realm of gods. But if he comes back then the death game will happen again, and everyone precious to Cain will get caught up in it. Cain thinks that he doesn't want that, and he wonders how he can stop Eren. Yuya mentions that Cain can only stop him by getting stronger, and he tells Cain that Eren is linked to Cain because the friends that Yuya failed to protect were Cain's parents when he was Shina Kazuya. He explains that his parents and him were summoned to this world at the same time, and the gods explained to them about Eren, and they asked them to save the world from him, as they can't directly interfere with it. They gave him the crystal to seal Eren, and Yuya then battled him with his friends, but Eren was too powerful, and they couldn't even come close to hurting him. He then used magic to hurt Shina's mother Megumi, and even healing magic couldn't heal her wound. This made Shina's father angry, and he sacrificed his body to take a hold of Eren, and Yuya managed to seal him in the crystal. Returning to the present, Cain defeats Darain, and Darain states that Cain's training is now over. Cain then goes back to Yuya's mansion, and he visits his father's and mother's grave, and Yuya tells him that they were always worried about him. He mentions that they were searching for a way to return to him, and Cain thanks them for always thinking about him. He also thanks Yuya for looking after his parents, and Yuya then asks Cain to try to take the cookie from him. Cain manages to take away the cookie, and Yuya thinks that Cain has gotten stronger. Cain states that this is all thanks to Yuya training him, and Yuya states that it was Cain's hard work which made him strong. Yuya then asks Cain if he would like to have some coffee, and Cain states that he can't as he has to hurry back to his world. Yuya then states that Cain can't go back looking like this, and he uses his magic to make Cain look the same as when he came here. He tells Cain to take Haku with him, and Darain states that he should also take the baby dragon with him. Cain forms a contract with the baby dragon, and he names him Jin, and he thanks his teachers for looking after him. Yuya then gives Cain a sword that he should deliver to the king, and Cain returns home. Darain thinks that Cain will one day be even stronger than the both of them, and Yudia agrees, and he mentions that Cain has a lot more to protect than either of them. At home Sylvie, Telestia, and Silk are glad to see that Cain is back, and Telestia states that she had faith in Cain. Silk mentions that they learned how to make cookies while they waited for him, and Cain states that he likes cookies, and he starts to eat them while crying. The girls can't believe that Cain likes cookies this much, and Cain mentions that they are really good. The girls then welcome him home, and Cain thanks them for their warm welcome. The story continues with the current king finding out that Cain met the first king, but he doesn't believe it. Cain explains that the first king created a separate world, and he is living there as its god of creation. He mentions that the first king also gave him a sword, and the king thinks that this is the katana that the first king used. Seeing this, he believes Cain, and the king states that the letter mentions that he was trained by the first king. Cain states that it's true, and he mentions that the training was really hard. He states that he was forced to train day and night for 5 years, and the king wonders how he could have trained for 5 years when he was only gone for 5 days. Duke Eric then informs Cain that a notice came from the Adventurers Guild, and had mentioned that his registration will be cancelled if Cain doesn't complete the quest needed for him to advance to rank A soon. The scene then cuts to the guild, and Cain asks the guild master why his registration is being cancelled. The guild master states that he was worried for Cain as he didn't show up for a few days, and Cain states that he was busy. The guild master states that he heard from Tefana that Cain went somewhere unannounced, and Cain then asks about his registration. The guild master states that when he promoted Cain to rank A there was a quest that he needed him to complete, but the time limit on that is almost up. He states that Cain needs to hurry and complete that quest or his registration will be cancelled. Cain asks him to not do that, and the guild master tells him to accept the quest right away. Cain is hesitant to do it, but the guild master threatens him with his registration, and Cain agrees. The guild master then states that for his quest Cain will need to subjugate some bandits that show up on the route from Gracia to the royal capital, and he states that they are a group of 10 so Cain should be able to handle it as he is the strongest guy in the capital. The scene then cuts to Cain checking out the route of the bandits using his fly spell, and he notices that the bandits are attacking someone. Cain goes in to save the group, and he notices that the people being attacked are his teachers Millie and Nina, and Parma's father is also with them. He notices that Millie is hurt, and he heals her. Cain then states that the bandits will pay for hurting his teachers, and he takes them out easily. Parma's father then thanks Cain for saving them, and he mentions that it's not a problem as he was already on a quest to subjugate these bandits. Millie and Nina then mention that subjugation quests are only for those with C rank or higher, and Cain shows them his A rank card which surprises them. He mentions that some things happened and he got promoted to A rank, and Parma's father then wonders what they are going to do with the captured bandits. Cain states that they can leave the bandits to him, as he is A rank, and the scene cuts to Cain dragging the bandits through the town in a carriage. They stop at Tamani's shop, and Parma's father thanks Cain for escorting him home. Parma wonders who the people in the cage are, and Cain states that these are some bandits that he captured. Parma can't believe that Cain is working hard even on his day off from school, and she states that he must also have some baron work to do. Millie and Nina can't believe that Cain is already a baron, and Millie states that she should not talk to him like an old friend. Cain mentions that it's fine, as she is still his teacher, and Millie states that Cain has grown up a lot in the last few years. Cain then mentions that he needs to report to the guild now, and he leaves. Millie and Nina follow after him as they need to go to the guild as well. The scene then cuts to Cain informing Risha that he has finished his quest, and Risha states that she will let the guild master know about it. The guys from before then start to pick on Millie and Nina again, and Cain intervenes. They recognize him as the guy who beat them up the last time, and they back off. Claude then comes there, and he mentions that most adventurers would have a hard time with a group like that. Cain states that he was just protecting his friends, and Claude notices that Cain's friends are Millie and Nina. Cain then wonders how the four of them know each other, and Claude states that Millie is his younger sister. He mentions that he is surprised that Cain knows them, and Millie explains that they were Cain's tutors when he was 5. Claude then states that this reunion calls for a drink, and the scene cuts to them drinking. Claude then asks them why they are together, and Millie explains that Cain saved them from a bunch of bandits when they were out for a mission. Nina states that Cain is already A rank, and Claude can't believe this. He thinks that he shouldn't be surprised knowing how strong Cain is, and he mentions that he is the only student who kept up with him during his exams. Millie is surprised to know that Cain kept up with her brother, and Nina states that Cain has already been appointed his own land as a baron. Claude and Lena can't believe that Cain is a baron, and Claude asks him to not charge him for insulting a noble for being rude to him. Cain states that he won't, and Millie then asks him how he got this strong. Cain thinks that he can't tell her that he trained with the gods, and Millie states that he has been killing monsters like the Red Dragon ever since he was little. Claude is surprised to hear this, and Millie and Nina then state that Cain also gave them a magic bag. Lena then asks them how much does this magic bag hold, and Millie states that she doesn't know, but it has never been full. Lena then asks Cain where did those magic bags come from, and Cain states that he made them himself. Nina mentions that they can hold an entire mansion inside them, and Lena states that this would make them a national treasure class item. She asks Cain to make one for her as well, and she then passes out. Claude states that Lena isn't good at holding her liquor and he mentions she won't remember any of this tomorrow. Cain then remembers that he also has to go to school tomorrow, and Claude wonders why a noble with his own domain needs to go to school. He thinks that Cain must feel like he doesn't fit in there, and Cain states that he does, but there are still a lot of things that he needs to learn. Cain then leaves, and Claude thinks that Cain must be having a rough time at the school, and he wonders if there is anything they could do to help him. Risha then comes there, and she mentions that the teacher who was supposed to teach the adventuring class at the academy tomorrow is injured, and she is looking for a substitute. Claude asks her to tell him a little more about this, and the scene cuts to Cain at the academy. He is attending the magic class, and the teacher tells the students to fire their spell and aim for the targets. Cain thinks that it's time for him to show the results of his training, and the teacher tells him that he is forbidden from using attack magic on school grounds. She mentions that even his beginner-level spells are too powerful for their barrier to withstand, and she states that he doesn't need to worry, as he is still going to get credit for this class. We see that Claude and the others are watching this, and they think that Cain really doesn't fit in with his class. They think that they need to give him a hand, and Claude states that they will do what they discussed. The scene then cuts to Cain's adventuring class, and the teacher states that he asked some adventurers to join them today. Cain notices that the adventurers joining them are Claude and the others, and the students in the class also recognize them. Claude then asks the class how many of them are registered as adventurers, and everyone raises their hands. He thinks that he should expect this much from those who took the adventuring course, and he then asks them to show their guild cards. The students take out their cards, but Cain hesitates to do so, and Claude asks Cain to take it out. Cain thinks that if he takes out his gold card right now then everyone would be even more put off, and he states that he forgot his card at home. Claude then tells him to keep his card with him at all times, and the scene then cuts to the students at the training grounds. Claude states that they will be getting into mock battles, and he mentions that the most basic element of these battles is physical enhancement or boost. He mentions that he will start with whoever is ready, and the students then come to challenge Claude one by one. Cain also wants to fight him, but Claude doesn't pick him, thinking that Cain should go in the end when everyone knows how strong Claude really is, and when Cain fights on even terms with him everyone will know how amazing he really is. Cain is still waiting for his turn, and his students tell him that he should get in the line. Cain notices a big line and he gets into it, and he waits patiently for his turn. His turn then comes, but the time for the class period runs out, and Claude states that they will continue this next time. The teacher then mentions that calling in adventurers for the class is off schedule for a while, as the school budget was affected because of the barrier that Cain destroyed. This pisses off Cain, and the scene cuts to Cain returning to the forest near his father's domain. He vents his anger on the beasts and rocks in the forest, and seeing the fire spells in the forest the guard thinks that it must be the Prince of Darkness. He alerts everyone, and they all ride out with Garm to take care of this. Cain then returns to his mansion after calming down, and he leaves his handkerchief behind. Garm then arrives at the location of the disturbance, and he notices a crater there with Cain's handkerchief in the middle of it. The scene then cuts to Cain talking with the king, and the king states he received an urgent message from Garm. The message said that the Prince of Darkness appeared in the forest of monsters, and the forest was razed. The king then asks Cain if he didn't receive a warning from the gods about it, and Magnus suggests that they should work with the other nations to take care of this problem. Cain states that it's not necessary to do that, and the king then asks him if he is hiding something. Cain tries to deny this, but the king insists, and Cain ends up telling him everything. Elsewhere we see that a dragon is eating monsters, and it is revealed that the dragon is part of Aaron's body. Aaron thinks that the seal is breaking slowly, and soon it will be completely gone, and he states that the gods should watch out for him. The scene then cuts to Garm scolding Cain after showing him his handkerchief, and he mentions that Cain should stop troubling him like this. The story continues, and we see that Cain's class is having a lesson on summoning magic. The teacher then asks if Cain is here, and Cain wonders if he is studying on his own again. The teacher states that Cain can participate in today's class as they are not using attack magic. She states that she has brought a special teacher for him, and the teacher introduces himself as a palace mage named Grat. He mentions that there are two types of summoning magic, and in one you have to establish a bond with a monster and contract with it, and the other is to summon a monster from a magic circle and form a contract with it. He states that they will be testing magic circle summoning today, and he mentions that if they fail to form a contract with the summoned monster, then it will disappear. Everyone then summons some monsters using the summoning circle Grat gave them, and they all summon something small and cute. One of the students then summon a big monster, but he is unable to form a contract with it because of his lack of magic power. Everyone else is done now, and it's finally Cain's turn. Cain wonders if he can put as much magic as he wants in it, and he wonders what will happen if something crazy shows up. Grat states that Cain doesn't need to worry as it will just disappear if Cain can't form a contract with it. Cain then puts his magic in the summoning circle, and Grat then tells him to stop after seeing his immense magic power, but Cain can't stop, and he summons a demon. The demon then wonders why a human has summoned him, the Prince of Darkness, and Cain uses his flash spell to blind everyone momentarily. Cain then wonders if the demon is on Aaron's side, and the Prince of the Darkness then uses his ability to look at Cain's status. He then bows down to Cain, and he asks him to not kill him. He states that he will gladly form a summoning contract with him, and he would even destroy a nation if Cain were to order him to do so. Cain states that he would never order something like that, and the Prince of Darkness mentions that Cain should form a contract with him in case he changes his mind. He then introduces himself as Seth, and Cain forms a contract with him. He then leaves, and Grat wonders if Cain just summoned the Prince of Darkness. Cain states that he did, but he couldn't form a contract with him. Grat states that he will leave it at that, and Cain is glad that he managed to cover it up. The scene then cuts to Cain at the palace, and the king asks Cain what he summoned at the school today. Cain thinks that he wasn't able to cover it up, and he states that he summoned the Prince of Darkness. This surprises the king, and he asks Cain what he did with him. Cain states that he formed a contract with it, and the king wonders if Cain has any idea what would have happened if the Prince of Darkness went on a rampage. He states that the prince could have destroyed the capital in the blink of an eye, and Cain apologizes, and he mentions that the magic circle just kept pulling in his magic. Grat states that summoning a demon would be one thing, but Cain summoned the Prince of Darkness, and he wonders how much magic Cain has. The king then thinks that his training with the first king might have increased his magic power, and he asks Cain to show him what his insane status looks like. The king then tells Grat that he should never speak of what he is about to see here, and he should assume that speaking of it might get him executed. Cain then opens his status, and they are surprised to see that he has become a demigod, and his status is immeasurable. Grat then bows down to him, and the king asks Cain if he is going to destroy the kingdom. He states that Cain can probably destroy the whole world right now, and Cain mentions that he is not going to do something like this. He asks them all to treat him like they always have, and the king states that they will. He then tells Grat to never speak of what he just saw, and he informs Cain that he is going to arrange an audience soon, and then he will make Cain a viscount, and give him a town to govern. He states that Cain can do with it as he pleases, and if Cain is successful in governing it then he will announce Cain's engagement. The king mentions that he will not entertain any objections, and he states that it will be a town near the royal capital. The king then tells Cain that a man who can't protect a single town will never be able to protect the entire nation, and he leaves. The scene cuts to Cain informing Sylvie about his promotion, and Sylvie asks him what town he will be governing. Cain mentions that he still hasn't been told about it, and Sylvie states that they should celebrate. Colin then comes there, and he mentions that he has received word from Master Jin in Gracia that signs of an onslaught have been observed in the Forest of Monsters. The scene then cuts to Cain in Gracia, and he meets his brother Jin. Cain asks him about the situation, and Jin states that there has been a vast increase in adventurers being attacked by monsters in the past couple of months. He sent some high-ranking adventurers to look into it, and they told him that the number of monsters in the forest has grown, and they have become more savage. He wonders if Cain knows about the incident when Monster went savage and left the confines of the forest a few decades ago, and Cain wonders if he is talking about the onslaught. Jin mentions the state of the forest is the same as it was back then, so he contacted their father to send out adventurers from across the land via the guild. He states that they can't do much more than that as there are only signs of the onslaught, and he mentions that they have to handle it carefully. Cain then states that he will go have a look around the forest, and Jin states that he can't allow the head of a noble house to put himself in danger. Cain then shows Jin his A-rank adventurer card, and seeing this Jin asks for Cain's help. Cain states that he will visit the Adventurers Guild first, and gather information about the forest. The scene then cuts to the Adventurers Guild, and Rudy greets Cain. She asks him what brings him here, and Cain states that he has heard that there is trouble in the forest. Rudy mentions that the signs of an onslaught are increasing in the forest, and it has become difficult to even approach the forest as the monsters have become too savage. Millie and Nina then come into the guild, and Cain asks them what brings them here. Nina states that the guild asked them to come, and they have put out a call for all high-rank adventurers. He asks them if they have already been to the forest, and Nina states that there are too many monsters there. Millie mentions that they couldn't go deeper on their own, and they are planning to join Claude and Lena when they arrive here. Rudy then wonders what Cain is going to do now, and Cain states that he is going to check out the forest. Millie and Nina mention that it's dangerous, and Cain should wait for Claude and Lena with them, and Cain states that he needs to get an idea of what's going on as soon as possible. He mentions that they don't need to worry as he is strong, and Rudy states that Cain shouldn't go alone. Cain states that he is not alone, and the scene cuts to Cain scouting the forest with Jin and Haku. Cain uses search to look for monsters, and he feels like someone is watching him. He fights some monsters in the forest while looking for that person, but he can't find him. Cain then thinks that he should have Seth look into this, and he summons him. He asks Seth to investigate this forest, and he mentions that something is weird here. Seth states that there is a being beyond here with overwhelming presence, and it seems like a massive number of monsters are heading towards it. He states that they are all high-level monsters, and Cain thinks that it would be a problem if that many strong monsters enter Gracia. He then asks Seth to gather more details, and Seth states that he has a subordinate who specializes in investigation. He asks for permission to summon him, and Cain allows him to do so. Seth then summons Dalmatia, and Dalmatia asks about Cain. Seth states that this is the person he is contracted to, and Dalmatia bows down to Cain. Cain then tells them to stop this and investigate the forest, and Dalmatia uses his special ability to investigate the forest. Some red dragons then come out of the forest, and Cain slays them quickly. Dalmatia is surprised to see Cain's power, and Cain then states that he will be going back to the town for a bit to let them know the situation. The scene then cuts to Cain at the guild, and Claude arrives there. He is surprised to see the pile of strong monsters slayed by Cain, and they think that it would be a problem if monsters like these come into the town. Cain states that there are even stronger monsters deep in the forest, and they need to strengthen the watch. The scene then cuts to Dalmatia investigating, and he states that something is trying to intimidate them. Seth states that they should go in and check it out, and Aaron notices that someone is coming close to him. He thinks that they don't seem to be the followers of the gods, and Seth and Dalmatia then come across a large horde of monsters. Aaron then commands the monsters to start the rampage, and the monsters start their attack. Seth thinks that they need to warn Cain about this, and he then teleports to the guild, and he tells Cain that the onslaught has begun. Cain asks Rudy to inform his brother about this, and he tells Claude and Lena to assemble the adventurers, and stop the monsters from getting into town. He mentions that he will be heading to the forest of monsters, and Rudy states that it's too dangerous. Cain tells her to not worry as he has friends who are really strong, and Seth is happy to be called a friend by Cain, and he states that he will lay down his life for him. Cain then notices that Tefana is also here, and she mentions that Garm has requested emergency backup from the chivalric order. Cain states that he is on his way to the forest, and Tefana mentions that she will accompany him, but Cain tells her to lead the knights in the town and help protect his home. Tefana states that she will do her best to protect Cain's home, and Cain then leaves for the forest. Seth asks him why they are running when they can just teleport there, and Cain states that not many humans can use teleportation, so it might cause a commotion. Seth thinks that being a human is really tough, and we then see Dalmatia fighting some red dragons. Cain then arrives there, and he starts exterminating the monsters using his Inferno spell. Seth tells him that the leader of the monsters is past this forest, and Aaron states that he will be waiting for the follower of the gods. The story continues, and Cain states that the leader of the monsters should be beyond the forest. Aaron then states that he has been waiting for the followers of the gods, and he mentions that the game has already begun. Seth then states that he will take care of things here, and he asks Cain to go after the ringleader. Cain wonders if he will be okay on his own, and Seth states that he can summon his underlings, but they might lose some of the forest. Cain mentions that it's fine as long as they don't lose too much, and he heads towards the leader. Meanwhile in the town the knights are evacuating the citizens, and Claude wonders if Nina knows how many monsters are left. Nina states that more monsters keep showing up as soon as their numbers dwindle, and Millie then states that she will go to the forest. She mentions that Cain can't handle so many monsters on his own, even if he is strong, and she states that even she wants to act as a master once in a while. Nina states that she will go as well, and Claude and Lena join them too. In the forest Seth summons his minions, and they mention that it's unusual for Seth to summon the 4 heavenly kings. They then notice the horde of monsters, and Seth states that a friend of his has asked for his help to get things under control here. The heavenly kings think that this friend must be great to be able to request something from the Prince of Darkness, and Dalmatia then comes there. The heavenly kings wonder why the legendary demon general is here, and he states that he was also asked here by Lord Seth's friend whom Seth entered into a contract with. This surprises the heavenly kings, and they wonder who this person could be. Dalmatia states that he is the God's chosen, and the heavenly kings can't believe that the Prince of Darkness entered into a contract with God's chosen. Seth states that he will explain everything later, and for now they must protect this place. Seth then fights the monsters along with the 4 heavenly kings, and elsewhere Cain is also exterminating the monsters with his Inferno spell. Cain is then attacked by the Black Dragon, and he intercepts the attack. The Black Dragon then mentions that Cain must be the one who took care of his brethren, and he states that he didn't expect anything less from the pet of the gods. Cain then mentions that this mess must be his doing, and he thinks that the dragon must be the god of amusement Aaron. Aaron then states that only part of him has been revived, and he has to borrow the body of the dragon. Cain then tells Aaron to stop this madness, and Aaron mentions that this is a game to see if the humans will be able to survive the attack of the monsters. He then spawns some more monsters, and he wonders how long Cain's friends will be able to hold out. Elsewhere in the forest Claude notices the heavenly kings in the sky, and everyone is surprised to see them. Millie wonders if they are on their side, and Nina states that they might be friends of Cain. They all think that this must be the case, and we see that the heavenly kings are having trouble with the number of the monsters. Seth tells them to take out as many as they can, and leave the rest to the humans. Nina then notices that the monsters are coming towards them, and Millie and Claude engage them while Nina and Lena cast their magic spells. Aaron then tells Cain that his eyes remind him of the people who were responsible for sealing him off, and he states that he was going to wait to see him suffer through this, but he has decided to deal with him right now. Aaron then attacks Cain, and Cain dodges, and he counters with his Inferno spell. But Inferno doesn't affect Aaron at all, and he thinks that he has to put more magic into it. Aaron then attacks Cain, and he doesn't give him enough time to gather his magic power. We then see Millie and the group fighting the monsters, and they are having trouble with their overwhelming numbers. Claude and the others state that they can't wait to have a drink with Cain when all of this is over, and meanwhile Cain is running away from the dragon. Cain then summons Haku and Jin, and they engage the dragon. The dragon defeats them easily, and we then see that Nina and Lena are out of their magic power. They tell the others to retreat without them, and Claude states that they shouldn't give up on their lives so easily. They then wonder how long this is going to go on, and they are at their wits' end. The knights then arrive there, and they save Claude and his group. Tefana thanks them for holding off the monsters' advance, and she states that the knights will defend the front lines from this point on. Claude states that they won't let her do this alone, and they are going to defend it together. Elsewhere, Eren attacks Jin and Haku, and Cain goes in to protect them. He states that he is going to protect the ones he loves, and Eren tells the pet of the gods to be quiet. Cain states that this has nothing to do with the gods, and he mentions that he just wants to protect the people he cares about. He then uses a spell called Overload, and he fires his Saint Sanctuary spell at Eren. Everyone can see a pillar of light coming from Cain's direction due to the spell, and Cain states that he is going to protect the smiles of everyone. Jin and Haku then try to stop Cain, and Cain states that he is busy right now. Seth and Damlatia then mentions that this is awful, and they wonder if this was really necessary. Cain states that he was just attacking the Black Dragon, and they mention that they can't see any Black Dragons here. They then state that the onslaught has stopped, and the town is safe now. Cain then meets up with Millie and the others in the forest, and they are glad to see him alright, and Cain thinks that he was able to protect their smiles. Dalmatia then thinks that the gods have sent a remarkable chosen one, and Seth agrees with him. They then leave, and the scene then cuts to Cain meeting with the king. The king asks Cain if the pillar of light rising in the sky that was even visible from the capital was his doing, and Cain states that he was fighting a black dragon, and he fired off a spell. Magna mentions that seeing the light some people thought that the gods have descended upon this land, and Cain apologizes and he states that intermediate magic was not strong enough so he had to use emperor-level magic, and the king tells him to not use such strong magic. Cain understands, and the king then asks him who the man casting spells above the sky of the forest was. Cain states that he was the Prince of Darkness, and the king then tells Magna that he is exhausted with all this. He wonders if he can't just let Cain take over the kingdom as he is going to be marrying Telestia, and Magna states that he can't. The king then tells Cain that he has something that he wants to give him, and he mentions that he will grant Cain a domain as reward for his exploits. The scene then cuts to the king naming Cain a Viscount, and giving him the domain of Dorenthal, in front of an audience. He states that Cain will now be known as Cain von Silford Dorenthal, and he hopes that Cain will further devote himself into the service of the nation. Cain accepts, and the others are surprised to find out that he has been given Dorenthal to govern. Cain wonders what's wrong with it, and Tefana states that the Adventurers Guild likes to throw their weight in Dorenthal. The nobles who were put in charge of it before have all fled, and Telestia states that this is cruel, and she mentions that she is going to protest to his father about it. Cain stops her, and he mentions that he is excited about this, as he is getting a chance to build a new town. He mentions that they should build this town together, and they are going to make this a wonderful town. They all then ask Cain to not overdo things, and they head towards Dorenthal. The scene then cuts to Cain entering Dorenthal, and the city guard is surprised to see that he is an A-rank adventurer. The scene then cuts to a soldier telling the king about Cain's exploits in Dorenthal, and he mentions that after arriving in Dorenthal Cain picked a fight with the Adventurers Guild, and during the fight he destroyed the arena. Later, at a restaurant he saw some adventurers being rude to a waitress, and he kicked the adventurers out, upon which he was arrested by the town's guard. The scene then changes to Cain talking with Silk and Telestia, and they ask him how Dorenthal is. Seth then arrives there, and he asks for Cain's help. The girls wonders if he is the Prince of Darkness, and Cain states that he is. Seth then mentions that his wife learned of his infidelity, and she kicked him out of the castle. His wife Lafon then comes there, and she introduces herself. She apologizes for her husband coming here, and Cain also introduces himself. Lafon then asks Cain what he thinks of Seth as a man, and Cain states that cheating is inexcusable. He states that Seth shouldn't think of any other women when he has a beautiful wife like this, and Seth states that she was a sweet girl when he married her, but she changed after their marriage, and he warns Cain to be careful of this. Silk states that Seth shouldn't talk like that after cheating, and Telestia mentions that he must have said a lot of sweet things before he married her, and they mention that betrayal is unforgivable. Lafon then mentions that they said all that she wanted to, and she states that she won't let Cain be in peace if he ever makes these girls cry. She then asks Seth to come home with her, and Seth can't believe that she is letting him come back. Lafon states that it's only for this time, and they then leave. The soldier then continues telling the king about Cain, and he mentions that Cain stormed into the church saying that they were demanding too much taxes, and when the guild and the underground guild came to attack the priest, he was already there waiting for them, and he turned them away with ease. The soldier mentions that Cain took things even farther than that, and he made a castle for himself that was even larger than the king's palace. They think that he is taking things too far again, and they all wonders if this was necessary. Thanks for watching parts 1 to 12, the rest of the parts will be on my channel. Please like and share the video if you enjoyed it, and make sure to hit the subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell to keep getting new anime recap updates.